Welcome to the Lose Weight, Live Life podcast. If you're someone who would do anything to lose weight, yet finds it impossible to stick to a diet, to eat less, or just what you think you should, this podcast is for you. I am your host, certified life and weight mindset coach, Clair MACKENZIE. Listen in to learn how to stop overeating, lose weight for the last time, and create a relationship with food and yourself that you love, all without diet deprivation and self-sabotage. Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to podcast episode number 143. Today I want to talk to you about how we humans sometimes, in fact it's more likely often, unknowingly increase our own suffering. This ties in with the work we're doing in the Lose Weight, Live Life Academy this month, which is all about losing the mental weight. Because reducing our mental weight, reducing our unnecessary suffering, makes it so much easier to shift the physical weight. The work we're doing in the Academy consists of 4 classes and daily work over the next 4 weeks. If you're interested, you can join the Academy today as a VIP member, or you can join our waiting list for when we next open for monthly enrolment. Find out more at www.thebestyou.coach/enroll. So first, let's explore what unnecessary suffering is and what's the difference between experiencing negative emotion and the unnecessary suffering that I refer to here. So negative emotion is the emotion or feelings that we experience when we are unhappy, frustrated, bored, disappointed, angry, disgusted, and lots of other words. Emotion is a one-word description of a vibration in our body, and most emotions we can think of as positive. They're generally the ones we want to feel more of, or we can think of them as negative, and they're generally the ones that we want to feel less of. Now, some of you might think that the secret to having the life that you want is to avoid negative emotion at all costs and to strive to feel happy and joyful and successful and loving all of the time. We often say things, don't we, like, I just want my kids to be happy and then I can be happy. However, this thinking, which by the way is incredibly normal, and we're very much socialized to think that way, this thinking causes us unnecessary suffering. When I talk about it's very normal to think this way, just think how many billions of pounds are spent on advertising products on the basis that if we buy them, we will be happier and that we will experience more positive emotion in our life, whether that is joy or freedom or comfort, whatever it might be. So we grow up thinking we should strive for more positive emotion or only positive emotion in our life. After all, it's the reason we do all the things that we do, and also that we avoid doing things that we think will bring us negative emotion. We strive for positive emotion in a way that drives all of our decisions. However, being eternally happy is never going to happen. We are never going to experience only positive emotion in our life because terrible, atrocious, and incredibly sad things happen in the world and to our friends and our families all of the time. In order to only experience positive emotion, we would have to become immune to all of those things, and most of us would not want to be immune to those things. And also to consider, if we only ever felt positive emotion, we wouldn't know what it is to feel good without the contrast of negative emotion. It's knowing what it is to experience sadness that has us appreciating happiness. It's knowing what it is to experience shame that makes pride feel so good. In fact, thinking that we shouldn't feel negative emotion is one of the biggest causes of unnecessary suffering. It's when we think something has gone wrong, when we feel sad, frustrated, disappointed, fed up even, that we start to layer on unnecessary negative emotion. If instead of thinking that we should be happy all the time, we instead embrace the human experience of feeling the full range of human emotions, and there are hundreds of them, and actually there's more than hundreds of them because I just Googled it when I was looking up this episode, and Robert Plutchik states that there are 34,000 of them. I can't quite wrap my head around that, but I can see that the number is likely in the thousands. Anyhow, when we know and accept and allow and feel negative emotion, even when it feels uncomfortable, we reduce our suffering. It's when we resist those emotions, when we feel down about the fact that we feel down and find ways to escape being down, such as by comforting ourselves with food, that we suffer more. Because we then start to feel disappointed or frustrated that we overate, or that we spent hours binge watching Netflix, and if that's our thing, instead of getting our work done, or we went on a shopping spree when we were already cash strapped. You see, it's when we do these things for momentary, fleeting pleasure that actually it creates the opposite of pleasure. On the flip side, we increase our own suffering. Okay, so what's important to know is that where these negative emotions are coming from, what determines the negative emotions we feel? Now, we generally live our life thinking that our feelings are created by our life circumstances. We think that if we have the things we want in life, it will make us happy. A nice home, good job, kids we can be proud of. But I encourage you to pause there and think, what does that actually mean? There is no definition of what equates to a nice home, a good job, or the criteria that our kids need to adhere to so that we can feel proud of them. And that's because our emotions are created by our feelings, not our life circumstances. One person may chase their dream of an 8-bed mansion by the sea in order to feel happy about the house that they live in, whereas another person may adore their tiny 2-up, 2-down. So negative emotion and positive emotion and unnecessary negative emotion that causes us to suffer all comes from our thinking. And this is good news because our thoughts can be changed, upgraded when we know what they are and we pay attention to them. Now, you might be aware of some of your thoughts, but many of your thoughts will be thoughts that you have thought so many times that they are now hidden in your subconscious and you don't even know that you're thinking them. And maybe they just feel like the truth or something that is just is and factual and normal to you. Often it's these thoughts that contribute to unnecessary negative emotion that create unnecessary suffering. Okay, so now that you know this, now that you know that you're likely adding layers of unnecessary negative emotions into your life as you go about your day to day, what can you do about it? Well, first, you're going to want to get curious and identify what this might look like for you. You're going to want to identify the emotions that are causing you some suffering and see why you're feeling them and consider how you might let them go. Now, again, at this point, I want to remind you that the goal here is not to eliminate negative emotion. It is to accept that negative emotion is always going to be a part of your life and your day-to-day experience, and that instead the goal is to differentiate between negative emotion you want to allow and experience and feel, and negative emotion that you want to let go of. Emotions such as self-pity, confusion, guilt, overwhelm, worry, self-judgment are some common emotions that cause us unnecessary suffering. In the first class on this topic in the Lose Weight, Live Life Academy that we actually did this week, we went into detail exploring self-doubt, confusion, and overwhelm. So again, if you want to know more about this topic and have access to the daily work to help you apply everything that you're learning in your life, then do check out the Academy at www.thebestyou.coach/enroll. And again, you can join as a VIP member right away, or you can get on the waiting list for when monthly enrollment opens at the end of this year. Okay, and if you have listened to podcast 141, then you might recall that we talked about self-pity. And that's a really good one to check out if you haven't, because it's a really good example of an emotion created by our own thinking that causes unnecessary suffering. So how do you pinpoint where you are creating unnecessary negative emotion and suffering in your life versus knowing that you're experiencing what I might call healthy or clean negative emotion? Well, it's really through a process of self-awareness and self-inquiry. So many of us go about our lives avoiding negative emotion. We shy away from it, we resist it, we do something to help us avoid feeling it. Overeating, overdrinking, overspending, over phone scrolling and TV watching. Overdoing things to the extent that the net result is a negative one, not a positive one. When you're doing things that create you more problems in your life and ultimately more negative feelings, take a look at when you're doing these things and be curious about whether you're doing them to feel better because you want to avoid negative emotion. One of the common ways we do this is to treat ourselves at the end of the day with food that is actually hindering our weight loss results or hindering us having the health that we want to have. It's when we reward ourselves. We're having a food or drink to relax or to zone out. And this behaviour can become very habitual. We may have started to do it at the end of a bad day, but when we have repeated it so many times, we kind of assume that we've had a bad day on default. That has become our new normal. And we do it anyway, even when actually, if we paid attention, we might realise that our day was pretty good. So you can identify unnecessary suffering through paying attention to what you're doing, what you're thinking, and of course, what you're thinking consciously and subconsciously. When terrible things happen in the world, when the news leaves us feeling angry, heartbroken, and disgusted, alongside a whole array of other emotion, we might want to pay attention to what we want to feel versus unnecessary suffering. Now, I actually think that feeling angry, heartbroken, and disgusted by the news at times is normal and healthy. I wouldn't want to not feel those things. But if on top of those emotions, you start to add more layers of emotion because you're thinking thoughts like, the world is a terrible place, the future is bleak, or you find yourself constantly checking news and social media sites to the point where you're not functioning in your day-to-day, then I want you to consider that you are creating unnecessary suffering for yourself, and you're not helping anyone else either. It's when you're spending a lot of time in your head focusing on the terrible events, but not supporting yourself in your life. And as I said, you're also not taking action to do something that is useful or in support of those terrible events. So if you're spending time thinking how you can help and contribute, that is different to spending time dwelling in the awfulness of it and not getting on and doing your own work. Okay, so we've considered what negative emotion is, we've explored unnecessary suffering versus clean negative emotion, and we've considered how you may be creating unnecessary suffering in your life through how you're thinking, and also you're identifying where it may be showing up for you by paying attention to what you're doing. Next, I want you to consider how you can reduce unnecessary negative emotion. You don't reduce it by resisting it or turning away from it. You reduce it by understanding the thoughts beneath it and allowing the emotion, at the same time as examining those thoughts to see an alternative perspective. Now, this might look like you noticing that you have thoughts about your day that are along the lines of, I'm just going to give you a quick example, it could be many, many things here, but a thought maybe along the lines of, I'll never get everything on my to-do list done. Quite a harmless thought, probably feels like the truth to you, but notice if it leaves you feeling with a sense of overwhelm, maybe burdened, or just despair. Now, let me shortcut bringing awareness to you about this one, because I want you to know, if you relate to what I just said here, if the thought I just shared, which is, I can never get everything on my to-do list done, if that thought feels like your truth, then I want you to know you will never have all the things on your to-do list done. You will never do all the things you want to do in any given day. So if you're thinking this way about your to-do list and day creates feelings of overwhelm, burden, and despair, I want you to know that you will always be feeling some level of unnecessary suffering as you go about your day. Now, it's not huge suffering, it is a small amount of unnecessary suffering. But when you multiply this by all the other small, consistent thoughts you think on repeat that lead you to feel just a little bit bad, then you can see that they can quickly build up. And then, is it any wonder that you find yourself wanting to treat or reward yourself at the end of the day? So I just want to flip back in terms of why is it that I say that if you think that you're never going to get everything done on your to-do list, and that is a thought that you repeat and think over and over, that you are never going to get those things done. And it's because of the word everything. There's always going to be more things that you can do in life. And if you're thinking that way about your to-do list, then I know that you are a person that no matter what you get done, you will always see that there is more to do, because of course there always will be. All right. So how do we address this? If you resonate with this, how do we address this? How do you reduce your suffering? You change your perspective and upgrade your thought. You stop chasing the imaginary perfect place in your mind where you have everything done, and you allow yourself to feel pride and a sense of satisfaction and achievement if you get maybe just one important thing done. If you change your mantra to being something along the lines of, every day I do something important that matters, how would you be feeling instead? Maybe proud, maybe satisfied. Okay, so go pay attention to what you're thinking that is negative. Pay attention to those emotions that are making your day not so good. Notice the negative emotion you're creating unnecessarily. Look out for when you're doing things to avoid feeling. And then as you bring awareness to what's going on in your life, question your ways of thinking and discover what happens when you flip them on your head. This is the daily work we've been doing in the Academy this month. So come join us as a VIP member or join the waiting list for monthly enrolment at www.thebestyou.com. www.thebestyew.coach/enroll. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you next week. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and are ready to live a more intentional life, lose weight as a part of that journey, and create a relationship with food and yourself that you love, then I would be honoured to have you join the Lose Weight Live Life Academy membership and coach with me. The programme offers different levels of support to suit you, including self-paced learning, twice weekly calls, private coaching, an amazingly caring community, and lots more. Find out all the details about when and how you can join at www.thebestyew.coach/coaching.